Welcome to the Virtual Jewish Thought of the Week. This is Rabbi Dan Lewin speaking to you from Dallas, Texas. The goal of these few minutes is for you, wherever you are in your office or your home, to hear some idea about the weekly Torah portion, to analyze that idea and have an application, a lesson for life. And if you're sitting around the Friday night at the Shabbos table, you have something extra to say and relate and discuss with friends. This week is actually the beginning of a new book. You have 5 books of Moses, so it's the book of Leviticus, the book of Vayikra. And the main idea behind the entire book of Vayikra is the laws of what's called karbanos in Hebrew. Karbanos is loosely translated as animal sacrifices or offerings. So it's the most untouched, overlooked area of the Torah, but there's a whole bulk of mitzvahs that deal with the subject. So one of the things that comes to mind when you think about this is what is so unique, what is so special, what is so important about taking an animal, bringing it to the temple, sacrificing it, killing it on the altar. What is all this business? Now, that question becomes even stronger when we look at the Jewish literature, the sources, the mystical sources which relate that the Hebrew word for karbanos is the idea of a korban, of coming close, which suggests somehow by bringing this sacrifice, this offering, you're coming close to God. Not only that, it says that it reaches, the accomplishment of the korban reaches to the infinite light. So back to the question, what is going on here? Now, there's many answers to this question. The first step to getting some glimpse of insight into the deeper meaning of karbanos is to get away from the primitive pagan ritual of animal sacrifices. But let's take one idea of a sacrifice and see how we can apply it to our life. Now, in a relationship, what is the difference between a sacrifice and an offering? Both cases, you're giving something to the other person. An offering means that you're focusing on what's important to the other person. So you give a gift and you say it has to be pleasing. A sacrifice focuses more on the giver, that I went through some type of struggle or effort to give this to you. So how many sacrifices did I make for you in this relationship? You know what I sacrificed for you? So again, the idea of sacrifices is focusing on the giver, the idea of an offering on the recipient. And you can technically have a sacrifice without an offering. So you made a lot of effort and you spent a lot of money. You take someone to the opera, but that's not what they like. That's a sacrifice without an offering. You can have an offering, you give somebody beautiful flowers, whatever, but all you did is just pick up the phone. You didn't go through much of a sacrifice. The ideal is that, number one, you make an effort. Number two, you focus on what the other person enjoys or what's pleasing. You're in touch with what's meaningful to the other person. But if we go a little bit more in depth into what the concept of a sacrifice is, you hear this word thrown a lot. You know, I need to make a sacrifice in order to be successful, or in a relationship you have to make sacrifices. What is the point of making a sacrifice? Why is it necessary? Why is it so important to be successful in a relationship? Why do you have to make sacrifices? There are many levels. Simple level, the idea of a sacrifice is necessary because there's a scarcity of resources. Inner resources, time, money, and therefore every time you have to make a decision, you have to say, if I'm going to succeed at this, it's going to entail me giving up something else. So in order to be a great athlete, you're going to have to sacrifice going out and partying and so forth. And the idea of sacrifice, if I'm going to give my kids a good education, I'm going to have to sacrifice a certain amount of money. But the idea of a sacrifice is an investment. That's the lower level of a sacrifice. I give up in the short term to gain in the long term. The deeper idea of a sacrifice, what we're talking about, is where you don't do it for gain. You make a sacrifice because there's some value in and of itself of making a sacrifice. In other words, the sacrifice is the offering. What is pleasing to God is that you go through some type of struggle. The question is, why? So when you plug in the animal symbolism and component, it says that each one of us has inside a part of us that wants to give, that's in touch with our purpose. There's a part of us that is selfish, that wants self-preservation and is reluctant to make sacrifices. The goal is to weaken that part of ourself that is selfish and to expand or reveal that part of ourself that is light and free and wants to give to the other person. The main quality that is connected to sacrifice is a strong sense of purpose. The more in touch we are with what we have to give to the world and what our purpose is, the easier it becomes to make a sacrifice. And a common question that's asked is, I'm so scared to make a sacrifice. I can't give too much in a relationship, or I don't want to make a sacrifice. I'm scared I'm going to lose myself. The message is that when you make a sacrifice, you don't lose yourself. Number one, there's not much to lose. And the self that you do lose is the selfish self. Because what that means is every little step that we make to do something against what we're comfortable doing, we get closer and closer to our real self, and we weaken the animal part of ourself, or the selfish part of ourself, and that is the thought for the week, the idea of making a sacrifice. Thank you very much for your time, for watching. If you like this, please forward it to your friends, family, anybody that you know, and I look forward to speaking with you next week.